Replayable games, you say? Well, there's only one franchise that I have never, ever, even for a second, got sick of, and always just want more and more and more of it, and that's Tekken. Now you can shout out, you can sign off down in the comments which Tekken you think is the absolute best. I'm gonna go with 3. I have played hundreds of thousands of hours of every single Tekken. I think Tekken 6 is the one that I played the least, because Azrael just, whatever the hell, Azazel, whatever that thing was at the end, just put me off that game. I hated all the stun locky cancel stuff, but there's a purity to Tekken 3. And for me, I mean, I'm playing in the UK as well. I've always played that game. I forget the hertz difference between the regions, but I know that UK is slower. And when everybody in the US got their hands on the PlayStation Mini, they were like, oh my God, it's the wrong version of Tekken. But for me and the rest of the UK folk who, grew up on that version of Tekken 3, it was like being reintroduced to like an old relative that you forgot for so long, and just got to hang out with them again. Tekken 3 is absolutely perfect. It deserves its place as one of the best games of all time. And I love just I'm learning every single 10-hit combo, every character's moveset, all the lore, everything else. Just give me that story over and over again. Playing multiplayer, couch versus with whoever would come over at the time when I was growing up, and then going back to that stuff with the PlayStation Mini. I adore Tekken, man. It's like, I love Mortal Kombat Injustice. I used to love Dead or Alive for a while across the 2000s and all the prioritization of counters and things like that, but there's something about Tekken, the characters, the way that it moves, that perfect balance of sort of animation priority and then also letting you jump out of whatever you've committed to move into something else and, sort of stay on your toes. Tekken's amazing, and if I can cite the entire franchise, then the entire Tekken franchise, especially Tekken Tag and Tekken 3, but I'm going to hold up Tekken 3 as the absolute best.
Okay, so forgive me if this is a bit of a cheat, but for me, the most replayable video game, plural, are the most recent Hitman games, which I recently got into after putting them off for a long time. I used to love the old games like Blood Money, even Absolution I really enjoyed. But what put me off Hitman 1 and 2 is the fact that they are built to be replayed. And I don't often replay games all that much, but the idea is, with each of these titles, you have a handful of levels, 5 or 6, depending on if you've got the DLC and stuff, that you're supposed to run through over and over again, because they're these big sandboxes where you have a target or a couple of targets, and you have a bunch of different creative ways to take them out, whether they are kind of scripted routes you can take, scripted assassinations, or just impromptu ones that you find out on the way, and you just want to, if you want to go up to some dude with a briefcase and just knock him across the head and feed him to some alligators, you can do it. You can figure out a way to do that, or you can do something a bit more scripted, like sabotage someone's car and then blow them up. And in theory that sounds great, but because I don't replay games, it took a lot of convincing to actually get around to them. But when I did, incredible stuff. Like, I put hours and hours and hours into just every single one of these levels, just trying to figure out new ways to assassinate my targets. And it is so fun. It rewards creative thinking. If you think you can do something in these games, you probably can. And there's some beauty to that only video games can capture. And it makes actually replaying the game, that's where the real reward comes from, because you get to know the levels, you get to know the routes, you get to know your gadgets, you get to know what you can and can't do. And the more you play, the more you replay, the more options you have, the more kind of, scripts in your head you have to deploy. And it makes you feel like a proper, genuine assassin. I assume, I don't know any proper, genuine assassins, but I imagine this is what you feel like if you're actually in the business, I guess. And that is uniquely cool, and why I will probably continue replaying both Hitman 1 and 2 and Hitman 3 when it comes out forever, because there's always going to be some weird, interesting way of killing someone that I didn't think about, and then I'll have to try it out for myself. So if you are thinking of sleeping on these games, do not do it. Do not be a fool like me. Go and play them. You can get them in the sale, and you will have hours and hours of content.
So for me, it's very difficult to pin down just one singular replayable video game, because there's quite a few that I play over and over again. One of them being Dishonored 2, as well as the first Dishonored, but mainly Dishonored 2 because there's more choices, as well as, Skyrim, Oblivion, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3, because there's just so many different choices that you can make. And even though there's already those choices that you can make within the storyline, when you actually go back and play games in a different way to what you're used to, you always seem to get a different sort of outcome than what you're used to. And this is very true when I was doing a lot of these challenges on WhatCulture Gaming, because people were asking me to do things in games that I've never actually done before, such as in Dishonored 2, they asked me to play the game without powers. And even though I've played Dishonored 2 many different times and done things very many different ways, I've never actually gone through and done it without powers because it just wasn't something that appealed to me. And playing it that way made me realise that I had to think differently. I had to go different routes that I've never done before, and I was coming across characters that I've never come before and lore that I'd never come across before, and it was really fun and just had a different perspective on the entire game. Same with Fallout New Vegas that I played recently. Somebody challenged me to play as a pacifist, which is a very difficult thing to do when the entire game basically asks you to fight these people or help fights with us, and it's such a difficult thing to do. So I had to try and go about it a different way, and I was coming across things that I had never come across before and challenges I'd never come across before, plus the fact that I couldn't fight anything or anyone, and I had to go a completely different route to what I'd normally done. And I don't think I even made it to New Vegas. I was playing it for an hour and a half. I still didn't get there, but I'd come across like 5 different villages I'd never come across before. So I just think that games like that just always have just an infinite amount of playability, because there's always different challenges and things that you can do and different routes and ways that you can play it that you may not have thought before, and will always get a different outcome. And I love it. I love it.
Oh, Sagan, that's hilarious. Aren't you a good boy? Hey guys, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, but I thought you'd rather look at my cat rather than my bold egg face for a bit, while I talk about most replayable video game going. Now, this is the thing, before I've said that I have an absolute adoration for Bioshock. I will play that game nearly once every single year, and I absolutely adore it. But you know what? A game that had me hook, line, and stinker was Diablo 2. My God, if you've never played that game, then you owe it to yourself to jump back in the time machine and go back to the roaring early 2000s and have a good old laugh. You loved it, didn't you? Absolutely adored it. You were a necromancer, you cheeky little shit, weren't you? Yeah, of course you were. Doing all those exploits. Weren't you? Naughty. The thing is that the reason why it was so good was because you could just obviously play online with friends. There was so much to do, so many questing things, and then once you'd completed the game again, you could challenge yourself to do it on even more extreme difficulties, in New Game Plus mode style things, or just like speedrun it. There was just so much fun things to do. Plus the constant quest to get better runes, thanks to the Lords of Destruction DLC, or expansion as it was called back in the days, back when you had physical media, was utterly, utterly brilliant. So yeah, I mean, I'm actually tempted to load it back up and have another run on it again. Maybe I'll call him Sagan the Bear. Anyway, see you soon.